Hi, I'm Michele Saumberfield, and I believe in reincarnation. I thought I would just do another poetry reading on this lovely Sunday afternoon in June. It's beautiful and sunny out here in Indianapolis, and I've been writing poetry this week. I don't do it typically. I did kind of have a lot of poems to write back in, I guess, about March or April. And then I completely went blank after I wrote about 18 poems. And then I suddenly started feeling the energy again this week after I was talking a lot with a friend of mine about one of my past lives. Now, during the early half of the 1800s, I lived as a woman named Charlotte. And one of Charlotte's dreams was to become a published fiction writer. And she never ended up doing that. I don't know if this is a true memory or a false memory, but I was actually getting a shower just a little while ago, and then I was going to set up the computer to do this poetry reading for my latest poem that I just wrote this morning. And I just had this weird thing start going through my head. And I don't know if it's a past life memory yet, or if it is something I saw on television and it's just kind of clouding up my mind. So I can't really say, but I have this feeling that I remember telling my husband, John, that I wanted to be a writer. And he laughed at me and he said, I can provide for the family. You don't need to do it. And I think you have enough on your plate. You need to cook and clean and do things for me. And I basically just gave up and thought, okay, well, if my husband isn't going to support me, who am I to say, And the thing of it is, my husband ran a store. So he, of all people, would have access to things such as ink and paper and whatever it would take to be able to write a whole lot, and to be able to put down a manuscript. At that time, that would be really scary, right? Like, what if you wrote this whole manuscript in ink and then you accidentally spilled your tea on it? I mean, I kind of wonder if authors at the time actually did, write out double or triple copies of their writings. So just in case something happened to their first copy, they had a backup copy, or just in case, they sent their stuff off to some publisher and the publisher really screwed around with their manuscript, they would still have another copy to compare the two. I wonder about that. I really don't know. But that's what was going through my mind before I set up the camera here. So I'm going to try my best to read another poem which I wrote. And I was talking to my friend Ron, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I said, there's that saying about how many times can you flog a dead horse, meaning like how many times can you keep repeating yourself? How many times can you keep asking yourself the same darn question without an answer if you're getting nowhere? How long can you keep, just doing the same thing over and over? And I'm all for writing poems, but I feel like it's time to let go of the poems that I write for Charlotte and just let the 7 I've written stand. And I'm going to put them in the epilogue of the book I'm writing about her life. But I feel that because there's so much despair and unhappiness in them, I don't want to keep dwelling and dwelling and dwelling and dwelling on that. If I want to dwell on that, I'll just keep reading the same poems over and over. But I don't want to keep producing more and more poems that are in the negative vein. I do find each poem has sort of an overlapping theme and some of the same elements, but one might speak more to her love of nature, and another might speak more to how humiliating it was to be involved with a man you weren't really interested in, or what it was like to be pregnant, back in the 1800s when you weren't married, and that was thought of as taboo and disgraceful and all of that. And so I find that there's different elements that tend to get more accentuated in each of the poems. So perhaps that's why different poems are surfacing. But I do think it's time to quit being negative. I don't know how being negative is healing. I think speaking your piece is important, and I feel like that's what Charlotte's been doing through me this week. But I also feel like there comes a point where I got to say, okay, Michele, you're in control. No matter what's coming through you, you're in control. And now it's time to maybe meditate and just try to get more information about that lifetime, cold hard facts, so to say, instead of writing poetry about despair and unfairness. But like I said, I'm going to put these poems in the epilogue of my book, which I write about Charlotte, so they will live. Maybe only 5 people will buy my book, but these poems will live. All right, so I'm going to take a drink of this really nice lime-flavored margarita, and then I'm going to try to read this poem. And I'm not driving, so I'm drinking and not driving. I live in the Indianapolis area, and my boyfriend's been in a couple rock bands here. It's a hobby and a love for him. It's not his profession, but over the years he's had a few friends who have gotten DUIs and getting into accidents, paying fines, going to court, having your license revoked, having in-house detention. All those things that can go along with it are not good things, so you don't want to drink and drive. But all those people were lucky they didn't maim or kill anyone. So don't drink and drive. That's all I got to say. I feel very strongly, I might be sitting here in front of the computer with a drink, but I'm not getting behind a steering wheel. So I don't want to give anyone the false impression that I believe in just foolhardy, partying. I don't care if you think I'm an uptight nerd. I'd rather you think I'm an uptight nerd than you think that I'm, a lush who's promoting dangerous things that could really affect your life and somebody else's. Anyway, so I'm going to read this poem. I have to pull up the screen. And hopefully it's enlarged enough. This is called Charlotte, Twisted Seduction. This poem is basically about what happens when you're in a situation that's really bad, and it is justifiably bad. I mean, there are definitely reasons it's bad in some ways. But what happens if year after year all you do is focus on the bad, and it's something you're so obsessed with, you're constantly, not paying attention to the good. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and go, oh, well, maybe things weren't so bad, and maybe I kind of really like this a little or that a little, but it's too late. I had a boyfriend I was with for 4.5 years. We started dating when I was 29. He was 15 years older. And I remember we were together, and he had other issues. I mean, he was 44. He had a history. He had other girlfriends and jobs he did or didn't like and this and that, and family issues, just like everyone. But I remember he was just such a cynical person at times, and yet I stayed with him for 4.5 years because I thought, oh, he's cynical and he's not fun at holidays and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But at least he's not a liar like the guy was before him. And so anyway, I was with him, and I was at that age where I thought, well, I would try getting married again. I didn't have any kids with anybody, I was, free, I wasn't tied down. I had a decent job. I worked at the same area he did, but not the same department. We lived close together. Our families were both Catholic. Our families met each other, but that was by some happenstance. It wasn't like we introduced them. That was interesting. But he never proposed to me, and we were together for 4.5 years. And I kind of started feeling like I'm glad he never proposed to me because there's some definite issues here. And I remember finally, right around like maybe year 4 when we were together, it took him 2 years to say I love you. And around year 4, he said, well, what would you think about us living together? Do you think we could? And I said to him, I don't think we could. I think we have some things we'd have to work on. And he said, oh. And he took my hand, took me back to the bedroom, started doing stuff to me. We had sex. And then walked me back out to the kitchen and he said, oh, well, at least we got good sex. And I remember thinking, if you're really at that point where you're asking me about living with you, and I tell you there's problems, and you never ask me what they are, you never ask what we could work on, what my reasons are, all you do is take me back to the bedroom. What does that really say? What is our relationship about after all that time? Yeah, we shouldn't live together. We shouldn't live together or get married, right? So I thought that was very strange. So that was an example. Then I ended up about 6 months after that point breaking up with him, and he acted for years as if he couldn't live without me. He would send me the most bizarre things in the mail, like crazy things. Like, why would a girl want these things? He would call me. He sent me flowers once. Well, those were nice, but then he sent me an email being all pissy because he sent me flowers and I wasn't running back to him. He told me that he kind of wished he had asked me to marry him when we were together and that he could have looked in the classified ads and found a really cheap diamond ring because they're always on sale. That's what he said to me. And I felt like, if you don't know you want me when I'm with you, don't act like you can't live without me when I'm gone. So that's kind of an example of how sometimes a person doesn't even recognize what they have for whatever reason when they have it, and then when it's either at the point of almost dissolving or is broken apart, then they went in. And I kind of feel like that's a little bit what's going on in this poem. It's kind of like, well, I never thought I loved my husband when I was Charlotte, because there were so many things that went wrong in my life, and I blamed him for them because he kind of initially precipitated a lot of the domino effect of bad things. But I never really thought about the good things and about how I should really try in my heart, in my mind, to love him. Like, it's not enough to do someone's laundry and to make stew for them and be physical with them and tend to those needs if inside you're harboring resentment and counting how many things about them you don't like instead of appreciating the things about them that you've learned to like. So at this point, with this poem, Charlotte knows she's going to be burned at the stake for adultery, and she's wishing her husband would come through and basically call things off and be her hero. And then she's kind of realizing, did I not look at him close enough? Maybe I even kind of liked him and maybe we could have gotten along, except for I always harbored resentment against him for 6 years. So anyway, that's what this poem is. It's kind of twisted. I'm in no way saying that if somebody has really hurt you, you should just give in and give over to them and devote yourself to them and say it's okay that they hurt you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying blame the victim or give over to your captors. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, in this particular circumstance, I feel that Charlotte missed some opportunities to be happy with someone who seemed to actually be trying, from his point of view, to do things for her. And but of course there was all the inequality of the genders and the way women were treated differently in like property a lot of times at that point in history. So that complicates things too. Anyway, let's see if you understand my poem when I actually read it. Let's see if it makes any sense at all. Okay, this is called Charlotte, Twisted Seduction by Charlotte Massey Hawthorne, because I feel that Charlotte is coming through me and speaking from the other side about her life. So, this is Charlotte's poem. It's called Twisted Seduction. I can't believe I've come to this, just moments from the grave. They led me to the burning post because I misbehaved. I thought my husband loved me, though it seems not so. His burning love has fizzled out, and now I'm in this throe. John said I was promiscuous. He said he could not trust. He found me on the table amidst a salesman's thrust. I thought my husband loved me, though I loved him not. I was all too sure of him. Now my lesson has been taught. He schooled me in obedience, punishing my desires. Don't act up or else you'll be sacrificed to fire. I thought John really felt for me, though feelings I felt not. I never could imagine such consequences when we fought. I gave him nightly pleasure. I cooked and mended and washed, but insincere fantasy's illusion has been crossed. I thought he really desired me, though before we tied the knot, pinned against his pressure like a rabbit that's been caught. I married John by duty. My parents said I must. Now here I stand to burn to death and blow away as dust. I thought he really cared for me, though reciprocity surely not. I do not want to leave this way. I'd truly rather be shot. John walks with a swagger. He's so self-assured. But I can tell you loveless sex made this young girl bored. I thought he really loved me, though questioned that a lot. Surprised and dazed, I asked you, what writer wrote this plot? I guess he can't forgive me for ways which I fell short. His control is all supreme, now my dignity shot for sport. I thought he really cherished me, though I may be wrong. How did I so misconstrue my grace with him so long? The law is quite astonishing, all power it assumes, dismissing me so gravely through writ served by my groom. I thought John really loved me, though I loved John not. In his nights and in his days, my demise will be his blot. For he will live among them in this little town, his reputation suspect for putting me in the ground. I thought he really loved me, though he never had my heart. I know my charms belied him, for that I regret my part. He wasn't a bad husband, though he was not the best. I don't recall desiring him. Doth I too much protest? I thought my mate did love me, though I've become disheartened. I'm trying to despise him now, while my every attempt is thwarted. I want to scream and hate him. I try and try but can't. Oh, why does he not love me? Is his love for me so scant? Now I know he never loved me, though this is such a shame. Our union was at his request, and and together we both came. I suppose I grew to love him, though I don't recall quite why. This perverse redirection any logic does defy. In my lowest moments, I begrudged his every move, though through those years we coupled. Exactly. Who seduced who? I thought I never loved him, though I never realized. Somehow in our intercourse, my feelings grew in size. My moments here are numbered, and I shall not return. A goddess turned to ashes. No earthly man will yearn. I thought he really loved me, though apparently not so. I guess he'll have to love himself. My time is up to go. Sorry about that. Oh my God. When I write in such like weird sentences. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I feel almost like this old-timey way of expressing things comes back, but then it's not natural, and I'm like looking at it thinking, oh my God, I'm getting the words all mixed up and I'm going to be dyslexic even though I'm not dyslexic. And I'm like so afraid I'll put the words in the wrong order, because I find when I'm writing this poetry, I phrase things funny or different than I normally would speak. And so it's hard for me to read it and get it right, and I'm all tongue-tied. But yeah, I think that's kind of like, okay, it's a little too late. I've got my hands tied behind my back. I'm on the post. I'm stoic, looking off into the distance. In the distance, I see a tree branch across the way, and I see a couple of German shepherds in the yard. And I wonder if those German shepherds were brought there in case I decided to run for it. And I just keep staring at the tree branch, because I don't want to look at my husband, John, who's off to my left, and I don't want to look at the row of people on my right, because I don't want to cry. I just don't want to cry. I don't want to give them the satisfaction. And that's what I remember, is thinking, I'm not going to let them see me scared. I'm not going to let them see me cry. I'm not going to beg John. And I will say no last words, because I'm not going to give them anything to go on. But maybe I should have. Maybe I should have said something. I have no idea. This is the weirdest thing that plagues my mind. I have conversations with my friend Ron about this, and I say, should I have said something? Charlotte, in that lifetime, should I have said something? Should I have had some last words? Should I have tried to move or sway anybody? And even if I had, did my husband have the power to call things off because I was his wife? Or did some magistrate who signed something say, it's a done deal, it doesn't matter what you do now, we're making an example of all the women, we're going to use her, and this is a message to all the women to stay at home and bake? I mean, I don't know what happened. I just, I think that this stuff over and over and over, because I feel like I'm kind of half reliving it. I mean, I'm clearly in the here and now, and I don't remember everything Charlotte went through, but I feel she's coming through me. And I've had past life memories of hers since I was 20, and I'm 56 years old. I'll be 57 in July. So I've lived with her memories for a long time, and they kind of just stopped at one point. And then they started coming back to me a little more again a couple of years ago when I was writing my first book about Marilyn. And now that I am purposely writing a book about Charlotte, they're coming back to me more. My actual memory of my feelings and my thought patterns, and what I thought about different things when I went through that lifetime. And I think it's important not to just focus on death. I mean, it's important to focus on life. But, I was saying to someone the other day that I've had several lifetimes, in the last 200 years where I was murdered. And I find that I focus more on the ones where I was murdered, but the lifetime I lived preceding that was really stressful and difficult and painful too. If I lived a lifetime that was pretty good, and then I happened to be murdered in the end, I need to make peace with that, but I can make peace with that much quicker because I wasn't suffering for long periods of time. I wasn't suffering in relationships. I wasn't suffering in some living circumstances. And so I think that's why Marilyn's life and Charlotte's life are so impactful to me right now. And they were both very blonde and became pretty much prominent, focused on people in their community. One was thought more highly of than the other, but even then, back in the 50s and all, being a sex symbol was kind of like this revered thing, but it was also a taboo thing too. So it was kind of like a love, hate, good, bad sort of thing all rolled in one. It wasn't the same as being told that you are Joan Crawford or Betty Davis and one of the best actresses alive. You know what I mean? It wasn't the same as that. So I feel like in that sense that Charlotte and Marilyn both had sexual issues to deal with, and they both had abandonment issues, and they both had emotional health issues that perhaps were the result of those other issues, and then they died tragically. So I'm focusing on Charlotte a lot lately, but my soul is Marilyn Monroe's as well as Charlotte Massey Hawthorne's, and I just wanted to read that poem. So there you go. Have a fabulous afternoon.